what do we need to do? I think this conversation need to be had with people who voted for this in the first place. You know what I'm saying? Again, regardless if you're a Democrat or Republican, think about what you were voting for. You know what I mean? I'm talking to white women. I'm talking to the 22% black males. I'm talking to the 45% Latinx males. I'm talking to white males. I'm talking to Asian folks and other folks who voted for this because you weren't just voting for this one person, this one personality. You weren't just voting against Kamala Harris. You were actually voting for a complete overhaul of anything that we could have recognized.
We're ready. We're prepared. Do not give in to fear. We are fearless. This is not the time to be afraid. This is a time to stand up and fight back and to resist any temptation for them to divide us. We're in this together. The rule of law is on our side. We will not give in, not give up. We will not capitulate. We will not bow. We will not bend. We will survive.
This brokenness that we're in right now,
Yeah.
I don't know how it's going to end. I really don't. I have no crystal ball with this one. This is so weird. As you know, I woke up to the news that Terry Moran is formally fired. Yesterday we talked about him being suspended from ABC. Former Nightline anchor, 28-year veteran at ABC, out because of a tweet. Now his contract was up for renewal. And ABC put out a statement. We're at the end of our agreement with Terry Moran, and based on his recent post, which was a clear violation of ABC News policies, we have decided to not renew. So he's gone. And if he violated their rules, yes, again, people have their rules on these airways. You can't, condone violence. You will be immediately ushered off the air. Glenn Beck got suspended for letting somebody talk about violence against the president on these airwaves. That's their rule. We abide by it. Not that we want to promote violence anyway. So it kind of lines up with how we feel about the world. Sure. But, places have their rules and they have the right to fire people. But it's the climate that we're in right now.
Yes.
And one could argue, if you're a journalist, just be a journalist. Terry Moran had just interviewed Trump a couple of weeks ago. I didn't know because I'm not really watching any Trump interviews, if I'm being honest. I just can't. I can't do it. But he just and Trump said they're giving you a big break of a lifetime, he told Moran, and you're doing the interview. I picked you because frankly I never heard of you. But that's okay. I picked you, Terry, but you're not being very nice, is what Trump said to him at the time. So I don't know if these things are lining up. I guess he asked him tough questions. Trump didn't like it. ABC, of course, was sued because of George Stephanopoulos saying that a jury found him liable for rape, which was actually, he is adjudicated sex offender. I think that did happen. That did happen in the E. Jean Carroll case, sexual abuse. Yes, I think that happened. It wasn't rape though. So distinction. So they settled $15 million lawsuit and issued an apology. But we're at a place where I was saying this yesterday, Kevin, as a journalist. I call myself a former journalist but you can't ever move away from the tenets.
No.
How do we move forward when we can't trust people don't trust the media. They don't trust politicians. Politicians can't be trusted because they're not acting like, even Republicans like Tom Kaine, like human beings. They're acting like cult followers who are just doing horrible things for no reason.
Yeah.
And we all live here on this ball together. So it's wild.
Sly Stone died this week, and my favorite song of Sly and Family Stone is "Everyday People." We've got to live together. There are a lot of people who don't want to live together, Karen, and I think that unfortunately, we have to kind of figure out how to be the examples that we want to see and amplify and multiply it, and give people models. My wife talks about it all the time. Like, what are we modeling? What are we modeling? What are we modeling? And I think about that more than ever. Like, what am I modeling as a man? What am I modeling as a human being? What am I modeling as a journalist? I mean, even before all this stuff happened, I always thought about the words that I used as a journalist, be it in print or anywhere, not because I was self-censoring, but like there is ethics. Like, if someone wasn't actually charged with rape, you can't say rape. You know what I'm saying? It's like, even in my film, folks will see that there are people who were accused of rape, but we can't say he's the rapist. We have to say, well, in the spirit of the Me Too movement, it's just knowing, knowing these things and being aware and letting people know that this is how we move forward. But I just think, The modeling piece. I just, as I'm looking at these things this week, I was at a church today that I used to do a lot of work with, and I'm going to be doing some work with. I'm actually going to be working with them this weekend around things happen. They're a safe space. I'm not going to say the name of the church because I don't want ICE showing up there. But this church is an example we need. They're progressive. They're a I don't even want to use the word progressive. They're a humane church that welcomes all people, all identities. They're also a safe space for immigrants. And they've had to put signs on the doors that, ICE and Homeland Security, if you show up, you cannot come in here without an actual warrant. You can't just barge into our building. This is private property. And this is, Karen, you and I go back to college back in the day. Like, I literally was a political science major studying about what was happening in Tiananmen Square in China and what was happening in Haiti and Eastern Europe and other parts of the world. And maybe I was naive. I know we've always had problems in this country, clearly, but I never thought we'd get to a point where we'd be calling the military on our own people, as is happening now. You know what I mean? This is where we are. This is where we are. And if we take this context and put it back in this says that someone would have called the military on civil rights protests. They'd have called the military on Fannie Lou Hamer and Ella Baker and Dr. King and all those folks. It's like, let's just get them out of here. No freedom of anything that's in the Constitution. This ain't got nothing to do with we're saying that we don't even value that Constitution. We could care less about it. That's what's happening. That's what's
So
happening.
I'm always going to ask this question because it's something that I'm every day tasked with having to find an answer to it. What do we do at this point, right? Speaking of Jersey, Representative LaMonica McIver, who was out there when Ross Baraka was arrested. We had
Yes.
Ross Baraka on right after he was arrested. He might be on tomorrow because I
Mm,
also want to know, he lost the first mayoral race that he ran and he came back again and won. What do you do when you lose a race? What's the game plan now for you
mhm.
politically? Like there's a question. You don't just lose when you're
Right.
Ross Baraka. You're always in the fight and you're running to keep fighting, right? So what happens next and what's the relationship with Mikey Sherrill? Because, she was gracious enough to come on the show. And we were happy about that. And we're gonna press. We're gonna press. We're gonna use this platform to make sure that things get done. But LaMonica McIver was indicted, and you can indict a ham sandwich. It doesn't mean that she's wildly guilty, but she was indicted on 3 charges of assaulting federal law enforcement officers during a clash last month with ICE in Newark. U.S. Attorney General, U.S. Attorney Alina Habba, who, by the way, was Trump's personal attorney in his New York criminal trial.
Right.
She's now in charge of all of this for this country. She announced that her office was charging McIver. So what happens when you have vindictive, petty people who can do anything? Whether it's legal or not, the courts are going to say no, but they did it though. And this woman now's her life is, she got to pay legal fees. Like it's a thing. It's a thing. And she said at the indictment, Representative McIver said, this indictment is no more justified than the original charges and is an effort by Trump's administration to dodge accountability for the chaos I caused and scare me out of doing the work that I was elected to do. This is what she said. So here we
They're
go.
weaponizing. They're weaponized. It's a revenge tour that's going to be endless. They're going to come after. They're coming after Letitia James, my attorney general over here in New York, where I've lived for a long time. They're coming after anyone that they feel is the enemy or the opposition. And again, when we don't understand that this has happened in Europe, this has happened in parts of Asia, South America, Africa, in America, let's be clear about it. We have arrested people here. There are many people who were arrested multiple times during the civil rights movement. John Lewis, Dr. King, many people, but this is really probably the first time we're seeing on this level people who are elected officials now being considered as folks who are the enemies of the state. Think about that for a second. What's happening here? This is when you start to move from a an experiment of what's supposed to be a shared democracy, and we know we can pick that apart, to not just authoritarianism, but this is what dictatorship looks like, which is, we all if you're not with us, you're against us. You know what I mean? And it's going to be our way, and we want to control everything. What do we need to do? I think this conversations need to be had with people who voted for this in the first place. You know what I'm saying? Again, regardless if you're a Democrat or Republican, think about what you were voting for. You know what I mean? I'm talking to white women. I'm talking to the 22% black males. I'm talking to the 45% Latinx males. I'm talking to white males. I'm talking to Asian folks and other folks who voted for this, because you weren't just voting for this one person, this one personality. You weren't just voting against Kamala Harris. You were actually voting for a complete overhaul of anything that we could have recognized. I mean, imagine how, think about how my mother and elders that I know who lived through the civil rights era, who lived through segregation, they're like, we haven't seen anything like this since the 40s and 50s and 60s. That's what they feel. You know what I mean? That's what they feel. And is Medicaid gonna be taken away from me? Yeah, in this big beautiful bill, y'all need to read it. I've read it. Yes, that's what's going to happen. That same program that the Republican lawmaker Tom Kaine from our home state of New Jersey, Education Opportunity Fund. I was just on the phone yesterday with one of our educational leaders in New York, in New Jersey, Karen. He said EOF, these programs are in jeopardy of going. That's saying that we're going to close the door
Yeah.
completely on people having a
Wow.
chance to go to
Wow.
college. I'm a professional writer. I've done everything I've done in my life is because that program was created in the spirit of not just black people, but black and white folks, all kinds of people who came together during the 50s and 60s saying, America, you could be better than this. All we want is an opportunity to have an opportunity for all people. And the civil rights movement didn't just benefit black people, it benefited white people, women, queer folks, disabled folks, immigrant folks, every kind of people you can imagine, because it said this is what democracy is supposed to look like. Everyone should have an opportunity to have an opportunity. And what they're literally doing in the first half of this year is like, we're going to close the door on all of that. We're going to create all this chaos, all this distraction. We're going to blame people. Listen, Karen, I spent a lot of time in California. LA is not on fire. It's downtown
No.
LA where people are protesting, but they'll make you think that the whole city is erupting like as if it's 1992, the LA rebellion, which was also only in South Central. But the difference is here, we're going to send in not just 2,000, 4,000 National Guards people, but 700 Marines. You know what I mean? What are we saying? What are we
Mm,
saying to
mm,
this
mm.
country right now when we're doing stuff like this? What are we saying to the world when we're doing this to our own people, to our own people? Have we forgotten what happened at Kent State back in 1970? What happened at Jackson State, where
Yes.
our own military killed black and white college students? Students were killed. What are we saying here? What are we saying?
We're ready. We're prepared. Do not give in to fear. We are fearless. This is not the time to be afraid. This is a time to stand up and fight back and to resist any temptation for them to divide us. We're in this together. The rule of law is on our side. We will not give in, not give up. We will not capitulate. We will not bow. We will not bend. We will